Today is Tuesday, October the 27th. I am your host, KC Phoenix. It is 7:46 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It is morning in Los Angeles and it is morning in America. And this is my morning political thought. So, as some of you may already know, I do the social media stuff and then I do the side news stories first. And then I go into my main morning political thoughts. So social media stuff, thepurpleelephantshow.com, main podcasting platform, The Purple Elephant Show on Parler, on Instagram, facebook.com/The Purple Elephant Show. If you're on Twitter, at RealTPES. And if you're watching this on BitChute, Dailymotion, or YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, followed by the notification bell for YouTube. Okay, got the social media stuff out the way. Let me go ahead and get into the side stories. I only have 4 side news stories today. One side news story, obviously, congratulations to Amy Coney Barrett for being nominated. This is President Trump's 3rd Supreme Court nomination that has been confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. So congratulations to Amy Coney Barrett. She was confirmed 52-48, which we already knew it was going to be along partisan lines. I believe the only Republican that didn't vote for her was Susan Collins, but Lisa Murkowski and Mitt Romney, which are usually the ones who kind of whatever, if President Trump goes left, they go right, or if President Trump goes right, they go left. But they went ahead and voted for Amy Coney Barrett. But as I said before, I believe it was Susan Collins who didn't, which is kind of weird because if I'm not mistaken, Susan Collins is up for re-election. So I don't know how that's going to play. I'm not familiar with her constituency as to how they lean. But with Amy Coney Barrett, after she was going through the confirmation hearings, her approval rating started to go up. And not that I'm into polls or anything, but there isn't a way to know exactly what people think because there wasn't an election for her, if you see what I'm saying. Because I always tell you the only polls that count are the ones on election day. But as for if you go by the polls, her polling was in the 30s, but by the time it was all done, she was at 51%. Where people approved, and that was with Gallup. So with Susan Collins not voting for her, it's kind of interesting that she didn't vote for her. So her constituency must really be made up of moderate Democrats or people who lean left. She might be in a Joe Manchin type of situation where his constituency is they're Democrats, but they're moderate Democrats or mostly Republican. Which is weird because Joe Manchin didn't vote for her either. Joe Manchin is a Democratic senator, and he didn't vote for her either, which I thought that was weird. But whatever. Anyways, the other piece of news, I have an article here, the Washington Times. The Supreme Court decided not to extend the Wisconsin deadline. Let me read this right quick. The Supreme Court siding with the Republicans to prevent Wisconsin from counting mailed ballots that are received after Election Day. In a 5-3 order, the justices on Monday refused to reinstate a lower court order that called for mailed ballots to be counted if they were received up to 6 days after November the 3rd. A federal appeals court had already put the order on hold. The 3 liberal justices dissented from the order that the court issued just before the Senate confirmed Amy Coney Barrett as the next justice. Democrats argued that the flood of absentee ballots and other challenges posed by the coronavirus pandemic, or as I say, the China Wuhan virus pandemic, makes it necessary to extend the period in which ballots can be counted. The justices usually say little or nothing about the reasons for their votes in emergency cases, but on Monday, 4 justices wrote opinions totaling 35 pages to lay out their competing rationales. Justice Neil Gorsuch acknowledged issues of pandemic-era voting, but said the law is the law. All right, Justice Gorsuch, I see you. No one doubts that conducting a national election amid a pandemic poses serious challenges, but none of that means individual judges may impose with their own election rules in place of those the people's representatives have adopted, Justice Gorsuch wrote. So, yeah, the Supreme Court said, no, we're not counting ballots after Election Day. Not on our watch. So that's what happened with that on the side news. This other piece of side news, this came from the New York Post. I thought this was interesting because I know it's not going to get covered, even though it's being covered in the New York Post. Let me rephrase. I know it's not going to get any traction, is what I'm talking about, this particular piece of news. And I thought it's good news. Good news. All right. So, title of this, 45 missing children rescued. That's good news. 179 arrested in Ohio human trafficking sting. It says, a month-long mission in Ohio recently turned up 45 missing children and led to 179 arrests, authorities said, in an operation dubbed Autumn Hope. The U.S. Marshals Service in Ohio and Virginia tracked children, including a high-risk 15-year-old girl from Cleveland who was linked to suspected human trafficking, authorities said Monday. 20 other children were also located as authorities checked on their well-being. During one of the missing children recoveries, a loaded gun was recovered. A 15-year-old boy had 2 warrants and is suspected in multiple shootings and a murder, authorities said. 2 other juveniles were found in West Virginia during a traffic stop. I was talking about West Virginia earlier, Joe Manchin. Leading to the arrest of an adult male who was charged with concealment removal of a minor child in Jackson County. Autumn Hope was conducted by marshals in conjunction with the Ohio Attorney General's office and the Central Ohio Human Trafficking Task Force, as well as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and state and local agencies in Ohio. My thanks to all personnel who have stepped up for this operation, said Peter C. Tobin, U.S. Marshal for the Southern District of Ohio. These are the same personnel who hunt down violent fugitives every day. I'm incredibly proud of them and pleased that they were able to apply those same skills to finding children. I know Operation Autumn Hope has made a difference in a lot of young lives. The U.S. Marshals have conducted similar operations before, including in Ohio. Last month, they said 35 missing children between the ages of 13 and 18 from the Cuyahoga County area were located during Operation Safety Net. Just over 20% of the found cases were tied to human trafficking. That same month, the marshals also announced the arrest of 262 suspects, including 141 gang members, and the recovery of 5 missing children in Oklahoma. 39 children were found in Georgia during Operation Not Forgotten in August, and 8 missing kids were recovered in Indiana in September as part of Operation Homecoming. The marshals have found children in 75% of the cases the agency has received, and 72% of those cases were recovered within a week, officials say. Since 2005, the agency has recovered more than 2,000 missing kids. That's great news. I love stories like this. And when people talk about defund the police and say negative things about law enforcement, think about this, because U.S. Marshals, police, justice departments, whether state or federal, these are the good things they do. And this was a good thing. So I wanted to read that story, put that story out. Like I said, it's from the New York Post if you want to go to it. But I pretty much read the entire article because I know that it won't get any traction in the midst of everything else that's going on right now. So I wanted to read that. So that was a huge deal for me. All right. As you know, I'm not going to go too deep into this This side news story, at least, and this also from the New York Post, but I'm sure it's in every news outlet, but the one that I picked was the New York Post. At least 30 Philadelphia cops injured during riots over police shooting of Walter Wallace. For those who are listening to the podcast, I'm rolling my eyes. At least 30 Philadelphia cops were injured by early Tuesday as violent mobs torched squad cars and charged lines of officers in a night of carnage sparked by the police shooting of a knife-wielding man. Organized protests gathered at a park chanting Black Lives Matter. Soon after news broke of the 4 p.m. death of 27-year-old Walter Wallace, who was shot by police after refusing to drop the knife. Hundreds of people then swamped the streets, leading to at least 33 arrests by the early hours Tuesday on charges including rioting, assault on police officers, looting, and possession of firearms. The carnage was caught in a series of disturbing videos on social media, including a speeding black truck that ran through a line of officers, hitting a 56-year-old female sergeant. She remained hospitalized with a broken leg and other injuries. Other footage shows dozens of people chasing a large group of officers down the street, as well as clips of a line of officers behind shields being attacked with rocks, bottles, and garbage cans. I'm not going to read any more of this. This isn't shocking. We're this close to the election. And for those who may not know, there are many rumors floating around that President Trump is doing well with black voters. Because of that, and let me make this crystal clear. If Republicans get 20% of the black vote, game, set, match. It's a wrap. It's what we call checkmate. It's done. And there have been many polls floating around about President Trump's approval in the black community, mostly among black males. And if the polls are correct with his approval, and I know people who actually approve of President Trump. One person that I'm really close friends with, she lives in Georgia, and her mother's black. Her mother is an older black woman. Her mother is in her 50s, and she loves President Trump. And and she's college educated. She has a master's degree in everything. They always say, oh, well, it's the people who don't have degrees who like President Trump. No, her mother has a master's degree in everything. And I know of other people who are black that like or love President Trump. If the rumors are true about his approval, because we'll call them rumors, and the anecdotal stories are true about his approval, then yeah, Democrats are scared right now, and they should be. But that's on them. They should have done more for black people. Let me tell you something. I'm not going to dig too deep into this because I have to go into my morning political thought. But when it comes to criminal justice reform, President Obama could have done it. We had a black president. We had 2 black attorney generals. They had a supermajority from 2008 to 2010. They could have done more than just health care. But this is the thing. When it comes to politics, this is another dirty little secret. Politicians, and I'm talking about on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, politicians don't usually want to get things done. Because if they get things done, what else are they needed for? So there has to be at least something around for people to fix. And that's why politicians don't always move as quickly as President Trump does. And that's one thing. He's not a politician. He's a business person. He wants to get things done. If there is a problem, he wants a solution. It isn't, well, okay, we'll put a Band-Aid on it, or we'll do this, we'll do that. I'll say it again for it to marinate with people. President Obama had a supermajority, meaning he had a filibuster-proof majority. where in the House and in the Senate from 2008 to 2010, meaning he could have, if he wanted to pass reparations, and I'm just throwing something out there, let's just say that if he wanted to pass reparations, he could have. If he got Congress to go along with it, where the House went along with it and the Senate went along with it, it could have been done, and there wouldn't have been anything Republicans could have done about it because it was a supermajority, pretty much. Filibusters, no good. So when it comes to criminal justice reform, if he really wanted to tackle criminal justice reform, he could have tackled it between 2008 and 2010. But he chose to put all his political capital on healthcare and just focus on that instead of focusing on several things to go to Nancy Pelosi, who was the speaker at the time then too, and say, hey, Nancy, I don't want to do just healthcare. I want to do criminal justice reform. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do that. We have the House and the Senate for the next 2 years. Let's go ahead and jam everything we can through right now. Let's just push it through. We can get it done. But he didn't do that. He focused on healthcare. But again, we had a black president and 2 black attorney generals. And you have all these protesters going around talking about police and everything else, even though in Democrat cities, they can pass laws. It doesn't need to be done on a federal level. They can pass laws on a local and state level that will handle the methods and procedures of how police interact with people in their cities. So, yeah, people have been acting like they don't have any home training all year long. This whole thing with Philadelphia is just same old, same old. And that's all I have to say on that one. So let me get to my morning political thought. I thought this was interesting. I'm conflicted on this. I understand what they're saying, and I mentioned this in one of my other episodes. It was a side news story on how landlords are caught in the middle between the tenants and waiting, and their lenders, and then of course waiting for their tenants to get stimulus checks so they can pay the landlords and do this and do that, and for stimulus money to come in to help out the landlords and everything. But now this has happened, which this is from the Epoch. I love saying it like that. The Epoch, EPOCH, Epoch Times, where CDC sued over unconstitutional nationwide eviction ban. Landlords and homebuilders filed suit in federal court against the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in effort to block an eviction moratorium issued last month by the Federal Public Health Agency. The lawsuit, known as Skyworks Limited versus CDC, was filed October 23rd in federal court in Ohio. It names the agency and its director, Robert R. Redfield, as defendants. The CDC argues the eviction ban is needed to curb the spread of the China Wuhan virus, which causes the disease. Yeah. C19. Although tenants can invoke the ban whether they suffer from virus-related hardships or not. Tenants establish eligibility under the moratorium by providing landlords with a CDC-approved declaration stating that they make under $99,000 a year annually, are unable to pay rent because of loss of income, have tried to obtain government assistance, will try to make partial rent payments, and will be homeless or will have to move in with others if they are evicted. Once they submit a declaration, a landlord can't evict them. It's unconstitutional, said Luke Wake, an attorney with the Sacramento, California-based Pacific Legal Foundation, a public interest law firm representing landlords in this case, whose properties are occupied by tenants who stopped paying rent when the bans were enacted. Federal agencies don't get to just make up the law, Wake said in an interview with the Epoch Times. It's very strange. The CDC exists to track and monitor epidemics and contagious diseases as some sort of a resource to public health authorities and whatnot, but they have very limited regulatory powers. Among the plaintiffs are Ohio Landlords Skyworks Limited and the National Association of Homebuilders. The eviction moratorium, which took effect September the 4th, prevents landlords from evicting residential tenants during the ongoing pandemic. A previous federal moratorium authorized by the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act covered only tenants living in properties with rent subsidies or federally backed mortgages. But the new order, which runs through the year's end, covers most renters across the United States. The law was passed with bipartisan support and signed into law by President Trump on March 27th. It also provides more than $2 trillion in economic relief, including economic assistance for workers, families, and small businesses. But the CARES Act didn't give the CDC the power to block evictions, plaintiffs argue. The statute, according to the plaintiff's legal complaint, allows the CDC to take certain actions: inspection, fumigation, disinfection, and sanitation, among others, to stop the spread of infectious disease across state lines. Nowhere does it authorize the CDC to impose a nationwide eviction moratorium, the complaint states. Although the pandemic poses a significant threat to many Americans and a serious challenge to government at all levels, it does not suspend the normal operations of constitutional government under our Constitution. Congress makes the law and the executive branch enforces it. The CDC's moratorium represents a sweeping assumption of power by an administrative agency that it simply does not possess, altering the contractual relationship of perhaps millions of people across the country. It forces one segment of the population, landlords, to bear a disproportionate share of cost of the pandemic because they provide the rental housing that so many Americans need. Wake said we should be paying for that as a country as opposed to forcing landlords to bear those costs. And to make matters worse, eviction is defined in the CDC order so broadly that landlords have been afraid to communicate with their tenants, he said. If you take steps to evict a non-paying tenant in defiance of the CDC order, then you risk criminal prosecution by the U.S. Department of Justice along with potential jail time. Oh, wow, I didn't know they were subject to jail time. In addition to as much as In addition to as much as $100,000 in fines for individuals and $200,000 for businesses, Wake explained. Landlords have lost control of their own property, he said. If they can't evict non-paying tenants, that is really the one tool that they have to actually enforce these contracts. The CDC's eviction ban is actually going to make landlords more skittish about renting and providing housing to people who really need it. People with poor credit, because if they are taking away their ability to evict non-paying tenants, that means they've got to be very careful about who they rent out to. Officials at the CDC didn't immediately respond to a request by the Epoch Times for comment. So that's what's going on with that particular situation. And I decided to do that one for my morning political thought because I think it's interesting. One thing I feel needs to be done, a bill needs to be passed. I mentioned this before. It's difficult to pass a bill right now, and my mouth is going dry for those who are listening. I'm taking a sip. Okay. It's difficult to pass a bill right now because obviously Nancy Pelosi does not want to give President Trump a win. I wish President Trump would have just went ahead and sent out the stimulus checks and allocated that money. Legally, he doesn't have a right to, but with an executive order, he could do it. And then, of course, he would get sued. He would lose if he was sued. However, the optics of him being sued for sending checks to the American people, because there's $300 billion that has not been spent yet. It's been set aside and it hasn't been spent yet. That $300 billion, he could do the executive order, go ahead and issue the checks, let the Democrats go ahead and sue him. The optics of that would look crazy. And that, again, as I said before, would be checkmate. President Trump would win because it would be a thing of he's trying to, the optics are going to be President Trump is attempting to get money to the American people. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats don't want the American people to have the money they need. They want them to suffer. That will be the optics, regardless of how the media wants to portray it, which also, even though the media is usually on the Democrat side, because for those who don't know, 80% of the mainstream media are registered Democrats. But usually the media is on the Democrat side. Lately, even CNN has been like, okay, what's the deal with this bill? Why can't you pass it? And of course, Nancy Pelosi doesn't like pushback because she's not used to it. So she gets mad at Wolf Blitzer and yada, yada, yada. And other outlets that are usually very friendly to Democrats are like, okay, what's the deal with the bill? You're getting what you asked for the most part. Why aren't you saying yes so President Trump can sign it and get money to the American people? And because the bill has not been passed, as I mentioned before in my previous episode, landlords are stuck in the middle of their tenants and their lenders. And now, with this particular situation with the CDC, the landlords are like, what can we do? So that's why this lawsuit is happening with the CDC, which from a legal standpoint, there is standing there. There's a case to say that the CDC doesn't have the authority to pretty much say no evictions. That can be rectified with a bill being passed. So I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm curious to see where this court case goes. I don't know if this will end up in the Supreme Court. Maybe, maybe not. But I have a feeling once the election is over with, things will balance out a little bit more. But I wanted to do that as my morning political thought because I thought it was interesting. Anyways, thank you again to those who have been supporting, subscribing, liking, and sharing, and all that other jazzy stuff. ThePurpleElephantShow.com main podcasting platform. The Purple Elephant Show on Instagram, on Parler, Facebook.com/The Purple Elephant Show, at RealTPES on Twitter. If you're watching this on BitChute, YouTube, Dailymotion, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Again, to everyone who's been supporting me, listening to the show in all of the countries all over the world, I appreciate it. Until next time, be blessed.